Um, I want to thank Dr. Salinas for the opportunity and invitation to come and speak today and share my perspective as an adult with CF. Like she said earlier, I am 42. Actually, in about 2.5 months, I'll actually be turning 43. So,
happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. So I always appreciate, every time I go to get my hair cut, my hairdresser sort of harasses me about gray hairs, and I always say they're well-earned and hard-earned, and I'm keeping them. So what I want to do today is just share sort of my perspective, my experience, and now that I'm old and wise, maybe a different viewpoint on the importance of adherence and compliance, and sort of figuring out how to figure out everything we need to do to take care of our CF and also still have a life, and try to understand that relationship between the two, because it is really important, and it is all about, in my old age now, I can tell you it's all about figuring out how to adapt. It's figuring out how to be willing to understand things change on a daily basis. It can change on an hourly basis sometimes. And share some of my experiences and probably channel the wisdom of my mom as well, and her guidance and my family's guidance that has allowed me to thrive and do well living with my CF for all these years. So I was diagnosed when I was 2 months old. Clearly at that time, back in 1970, it was a much different world for cystic fibrosis. Expectations for life expectancy were entirely different. I think at that point, once I was diagnosed, my mom sort of made this decision, or at least she says she does. She sets a very poetic sort of picture of, she's looking over my crib and not sure how, long I'd be around, but that she wanted to make sure people enjoyed me being around, and that, that I wasn't going to be able to just sort of misbehave because I had CF, and that through that has stayed true through the years, that she said, I've always had to respect the people that are taking care of me and working with me and for me, and that if I didn't, I wouldn't have to worry about CF, that she would take me out. And I'm almost 43, and I still pretty much believe that. So I think that that set a very early tone, that she was very willing to be very open about CF. The whole family knew. So I've been very fortunate that, I may be the only person in my family that has CF, but it affects everybody in my family. My grandparents, my cousins, my coworkers, everything in general, everything sort of has some attribute or some influence of CF in that. And I think my family's done an amazing job through the years to really allow me to understand my CF and live well with my CF by allowing me to understand that sometimes I need some accommodations made, but they never make me feel like those accommodations are being made. So some examples, when I learned to swallow my enzymes, which is a huge deal, especially back in the day when I was younger, and you would have to take like 20 to 25 enzymes with each meal versus like 4 to 5 or however many. It was a lot of pills that I had to figure out how to swallow. The ability to phone my grandparents and sort of have that celebration, it was equally celebrated when I phoned them to say I could ride a 2-wheeled bike. So CF offers these unique opportunities to have more celebrations, which, you can look at it that way, or you can look at it, I had to learn it, I had to do it, it's this horrible thing that I've had to do. So it's sort of all about changing your mindset and how you approach all the different things that CF offers us. Not that they're always great, not that they're always fun, but everything I get to do, or even the challenges of figuring out how to fit treatments in and sort of go throughout the day, is sort of the way I look at it, is an opportunity to fight CF. It's not something that someone has told me to do, which they have told me to do, but it's the one thing I have in my power. It's the one thing I have in my control to fight CF on a daily basis. I get incredibly competitive. I don't know if your children are like that, or if there's patients that are sickly, wrongly competitive like I am. And sometimes, especially even during an exacerbation or when I'm not feeling well or doing IVs or something like that, I look at it as like a plug-by-plug fight. And the more I can get out, the more I can do. And if I get more out, I want to get more out. And so it's sort of creating that mindset of, this is what I can do. This is how I can challenge CF. This is what I have in my control. And I think changing that mindset is from this is what I've been told to do, and if I want to be in control, I'm not going to do it. You know, if I don't do my treatments, nobody suffers except for me. You know, maybe it irritates my parents or upsets my boyfriend, worries my care team, but really I'm the one that's more congested or can't breathe or can't cough or whatever consequences of whatever I may have skipped. So I think, you know, changing your mindset as those of us living with CF, is the one thing I can do is take care of myself every day. And also look at it as a means to an end. Do I enjoy doing my treatments every day? Some days it's not so bad. Other days I swear the timer on my vest is broken. I swear there's something malfunctioning because it's taking way too long. But the way I look at it is a means to an end. It's a way to get to the good stuff. You know, it's a way to sort of be better. Someone referenced earlier that when you do your treatment, maybe you can play soccer better. And that's the way I look at it. It's the way I can make my day better by taking better care of myself. I can't say that I'm perfect. On most days, I'm probably about an A-. Some days, it's probably C+. Or if you ask my healthcare team, it might be an entirely different score. But most days, I do try to do as much as I can and also have a very full day. You know, I work full-time. I travel a lot. I live in Denver. I travel almost every week. And the ability to sort of figure out how to be organized and structured is incredibly important. And I think we were talking earlier about, you know, making choices and understanding what you need to do and how you need to do it. I am really, really organized when it comes to making sure I have my medications, making sure when I go to travel that I have an extra day's worth in case I get trapped somewhere. I'm really good at sort of figuring all those things out. And then once I'm in the city that I'm in, I'm very good at figuring out how to fit my treatments in as well as my obligations for work. Now, unfortunately, sometimes that means I sleep less, but I'm an expert at power napping, which has been really, really helpful. But I think it's all about trying to figure that out and really understanding the importance of the power of taking care of yourself. Because every time I do a treatment, I'm fighting CF. You know, and not that I've ever been perfect, and sometimes, you know, there are the situations where you want to sort of be in control and you say, I'm not going to do it and I'm in control now because I'm skipping my treatment. What you're really in control of is the circumstances. You're not in control of your illness. You're in control of saying yes or no, but you're still not fighting CF. And so I think that shift in mindset is incredibly important. And I think, you know, that sort of responsibility and ownership of my CF was set at a very young age with my mom. Like I said, she has some amazing wisdom that she has allowed to sort of shape how I handle my illness. And one of the best examples of that is when I was about 6 years old, we'd finished eating and she'd asked me if I'd taken my pills yet, taken my enzymes yet. And I decided that I would become an assertive and independent and yet bold 6-year-old, which I'm not really sure how I came to that conclusion that I should do that sounded like a good idea. And so my response when she asked me if I had taken my enzymes yet was no, and I'm not going to. And she was brilliant in her response to me. And she said, you know, that's fine. You'll be the one in the bathroom, not me. Totally not what I expected. I thought we'd have a little tug of war, a little skirmish, and that I never really probably intended not to take them. I'm not really sure what my goal was, but she totally took any wind right out of my sails and made me realize that, oh yeah, I was going to be the one suffering, not her. And I think sort of that context, that structure, is sort of how she's always set up for me to live with my CF. And, you know, it also was very reassuring because I knew that I would have my enzymes to take. I knew she would always remind me and, you know, be a support to make sure they were there for me to take. But that really it was ultimately my choice. And I think that set a huge precedent for how, not that I totally understand the concept or the consequences of all of that when I was 6 years old, but it was that sort of framework of living with CF that made it incredibly easy, well, not easy, but easier to understand how I need to do everything I need to do every day. I also think, it is my CF. I know it impacts everybody in my life, but ultimately I'm the one that has to put the time in doing my treatments, doing those things. I'm really fortunate that I have an amazingly supportive network of family and friends and my boyfriend. And, if I'm doing my treatment and, coughing, being productive and doing what I should, he gives me the little mucus cheer of cough it up, spit it up, and sometimes even wears a cute outfit. But, I think it's that support and that willingness to sort of just incorporate that that's my normal. It's not anything different. It's just what I have to do to get through the day. And I think that's another thing. I think we spoke about it earlier today, of not comparing ourselves to others and understanding that everybody has stuff they have to do. We just don't know what it is. And I think the more open I am and more willing to accept what I have to do in a day, it makes it less difficult to do. Because the more open I am about my CF, the less of a secret it is. The more I'm willing to work through the hard stuff and the scary parts of living with CF, then it gives it less power. And it doesn't hold me sort of captive in a day. But I think that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. But it also is very empowering because then you know what you can do. And so it's sort of an ever-evolving, constantly changing stream of how you're going to feel, what you're going to do. There's those days that just things aren't going great. And things are just really difficult. But because I've worked really hard with my CF team, and been really well educated about what I can do to try to feel better in a day, I don't panic. And I think that's a huge thing, is that if I have a day that I refer to as sort of a breathing optional day where just things aren't going well, I do all the tricks. I have all the stuff my respiratory therapists have taught me, my whole team have taught me, and I go through them, and then sometimes it's just not going to be a great day. But I think that appreciation of that understanding, that education I've been offered, allows me to really get through that day and get through that fear and get through that worry. And I think that's another huge thing that my family has done really well as well, is that I never thought that CF would stop me from doing anything. And I also never allowed me to be afraid of it. And so I think that is a huge thing, to not live in fear or worry. I think that is a huge component. And I'm not a parent. I barely have houseplants that live. So I can't be responsible for anything but myself. But I can't understand what it's like to be a parent, but I do know that the one thing that I think my family's done, and my parents did, my mom especially, was allow me to not worry and not be afraid to try things. And also that ability to sort of be willing to try things, and they don't necessarily always go the way we anticipate, or things might not go quite the way you want them to do. And that willingness to sort of take a tiny risk, not silly risks, not crazy risks, but that willingness to at least try things out, sort of what you assume you should be doing, is okay. Because I can tell you, as an adult living with CF every day, I have to put a lot of work into it every day. And if I didn't have this amazing life and all these opportunities, or this worry that I couldn't do anything because I had CF, it would be a lot for not much payback. And so I think that's always the goal, is to realize that we have these amazing tools in our toolbox now. I always like to say I am old. And so the first 20 years of my life with CF were sort of the dark ages. There weren't any options for airway clearance except hands-on CPT, which was lovely, to be hit by lots of people. The medications and the enzymes and everything weren't very refined. So it was just lots of stuff and not really specifically for CF. And then the last 22 years, almost 23 years, have been in entirely different circumstances. There's tons and tons of different medications. I've been fortunate that about every 2 to 3 years, every 4 years, a new medication, a new treatment has come out that sort of keeps me nudging along. Now, the flip side, the dark side of that, is that it adds more for me to do every day. But what an opportunity to get more to do, even though it makes it really difficult sometimes. And as I woke up bright and early at dark 30 this morning to hop on a plane and come here, it's always like, oh, sleep sounds so much better. But it is this understanding that I have this power. I have this power over CF, and it's taking care of myself every day. And I think it's that working with your team to understand what's going to work and what's not. It's incumbent upon us as the person with CF to pay attention to our body, to be one with our mucus, to understand how and why and what that worked, if that didn't work, to be able to then report back to our healthcare team and say, this didn't really work, and try to understand those things. And I think it is that relationship, it is that collaboration that's really, really important, because it is a team. I'm the only one on the team that has CF, but I'd never do this by myself. And I think that's that ability. I think parents need to reach out to other parents. Unfortunately, it's harder for patients to interact with one another. But that network and that peer group is incredibly important, because it's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to go through in a day. And that ability to have that connection, so I'm sure parents can relay their concerns or challenges of us, and us be able to do that is incredibly important. And I think, overall, the most important part is being really well educated about yourself, about what you're doing, why you're doing it. Kind of like my mom saying, if you don't take your enzymes, you're the one in the bathroom. It's not just I'm taking a pill. I'm taking my enzymes. If I don't, I'll be upset. My stomach will be upset. I'll be miserable for 12 to 14 hours. And I won't get to go do something I want to do. It was even referenced in the play, which is very much true to life. But it is all about that understanding and that education and that ability to really empower yourself so you understand. I also think it's always important to understand what you're willing to do and be able to work with your healthcare team to figure out what's going to fit for you. Because there's always sort of the ideal, and then there's sort of real life. And I think, I always get nervous with healthcare teams when I say stuff like this, but somewhere you have to find something that's different. Because as a patient, and certainly as someone with CF, I've fallen guilty of this myself, of this great plan is set out by my team. I say, absolutely, I'm totally on board. I leave for my 3 months, I come back to clinic, and it's like, so how's that working out for me? Oh, perfect, excellent, I've done everything. Then you go do PFTs and the world has ended and your PFTs are down, and there's either something in your future, and my favorite mantra is sort of, give me 2 weeks and I'll turn this around. But it's really, in that 2 weeks, I'll actually do what you've told me to do for the last 3 months. And now I will totally be on board and things will pop up miraculously. But it is that importance of having that trust with your team, having that trust with your parents, to be able to say, I can't do this. This isn't working for me. I need to find a different way to do this. My doctor that I grew up with, especially as a teenager, told me I should go to law school because I was so good at negotiating my way through every clinic visit and hospital stay. I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't follow that path, but I'm still really good at negotiation. But I think that all goes back to, if I'm willing to negotiate, then I also have to take the responsibility of what we end up at. And I think through the years, that's the one thing that I have very much committed to, is that if I fight against something, or if I fight to do something different, I have to be willing to sort of do what I say. And I have to understand that if I don't do what I say, I have to follow their plan. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes it's not going to fit. And so, you have to understand what you can do and what you can do. And you have to understand that sometimes you have to make choices. The question that was asked earlier from the internet somewhere in the world, either the world, of what do you do when, sleeping or treatments? And how do you find that balance? So I can tell you, there's times when I get home from a trip, it's very late at night, I've been up since very early, worked all day, flown home to Denver. I get home like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I have a dialogue with myself. I have like a good angel, bad angel. Sort of, you should do your treatment. No, I think sleep's really more important. Well, but you're going to cough because you haven't done your treatment, and so you're going to not sleep very well. You know what? I can sleep through coughing, not a problem. We rationalize a lot. And then also sort of the other side goes, well, you're going to have to do more tomorrow because you're not going to feel well when you get up. So are you willing to do that? But I think that ability to talk to yourself and have those discussions with yourself is really important, because it shows you're really well educated. It shows you understand the consequences of not doing what you should be doing. You need to sort of balance that sleep versus need, sort of a pro and con. So it's all about working with your team. It's all about working with your families to understand how to make the right choices. You're not ever going to make all the right choices. And sometimes I think those little stumbles are a little bit helpful, as long as they're not really far. But those little incremental changes that CF brings, the opportunities that you have every day to really work to fight CF is amazing. It's not what people make us do, it's what we can do for ourselves. And so with that, I will end and be happy to answer any questions. Nothing's too personal or too off topic or anything, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I just want to say to you, and I probably say this on behalf of the families, you are such an inspiration, and you give us such hope for our little ones. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Any other thoughts, or make me all blush? Any other thoughts or questions or challenges that I can, because I totally know we get away with stuff. Right. So the question was, she has an 8-year-old daughter, and she's concerned and worried about allowing her to travel, and worried about what you can catch, and worried about sort of being in a big, scary Germany plane. I just got off of one. So, I think I understand, it's a totally legitimate fear, but I think you have to sort of lean into it, and you have to take precautions. I drink tons of water when I travel, so I stay really well hydrated, so if I inhale anything gross, it'll keep going through my body. I use lots of Purell and hand gel. I don't wear a mask because I find it difficult to breathe. If it's a long flight, it would be exhausting to do that for me. So I think you have to take precautions, but I don't think you can stop. I think you need to, and I don't know how my mom was so brave to literally just she kicked me out of the nest. She let me go off to college. She did all of this stuff. And I think, she might get a cold, and hopefully it won't be bad. But I think you have to be willing to sort of take those risks a little bit, because otherwise it's a lot to do in a day not to be able to have in a life and explore. And I think, she could be at home in a grocery store and catch a cold, or go to school and catch a cold. And so that probably didn't help at all. But I think you have to be willing to, you're going to get bumps and bruises with CF. Unfortunately, sometimes they have bigger ramifications, but then you understand and you have a plan. You reach out to your team, she's getting a cold, or, make sure you have other things to go. If you're going on a trip, maybe have a backup plan if she starts to get sick, or while you're there, reach out to your team. Because I think it's all about being able to do that. And the more brave you are, the less fearless she'll be. And she will realize that CF doesn't have to stop her from doing anything. And I don't know how, my mom never told me she was afraid, but I'm sure she told her friends. And so she has this ability to sort of keep that from me, that allowed me to kind of be out in the world and travel. And she sent me to Europe after 8th grade with a French club with people that had no idea what CF was. And, all there was CPT at the time, and I should have just thrown myself against a wall. And I came back, and I was actually quite sick and ended up in the hospital. But I can tell you that 30 days I spent in France was totally worth it. And so you have to sort of be willing to take that leap sometimes and know that it's probably not always going to be perfect, but it'll be okay.
there are ways that we can accommodate and trying to be more portable with the treatment. So which is great. We have smaller versions. We have the acapella. So there's certain ways that we can accommodate traveling. I always encourage, kids to do whatever they want, and then we'll negotiate. What can we accommodate? What can we compromise? Can we do, instead of bringing a nebulizer, can we do just a puffer, just for that 1 week that I will be out with friends somewhere? It's important to live life to the fullest and accommodate your CF along, not stopping yourself from doing anything that you feel entitled that you need to do, that you want to do. So yes.
And I'm like a high maintenance girl. I have my vest, I have my suitcase, I have a backpack, I have nebulizers, I have like 6 billion different medications that I travel with. So it's totally doable. And I mean, you just have to plan and work with your team to find the right answers.
Yeah, and we can give you authorizations. You can do this as a carry-on and bring everything if you want to. And if it's more than 2 weeks, we encourage you actually to do so instead of doing the alternative ways. So yeah, go ahead and travel. Yep. So I was always very impressed with Kristin when I first heard her speak about this topic, and it was actually in a different type of presentation, but she went on and on about her choices. And what I was always impressed at how much she learned and she matured with her disease. And I could feel that she really owned this. This is really my body, and this is really my life. So I was really excited to have her share these words with you, and I hope this was helpful for what you're going through at home.
How much medication you have to take when you feel
Oh, so the question was, so when everything just gets sort of overwhelming and there just seems like there's too much to do, too many medications, too many treatments, what do I do if it's just too much? I have a bad day. And there are those days where it's like, this isn't fair. This is not cool. This kind of, I hate to say this word, kind of sucks. This is just not enjoyable. But I also realize that I'm going to have those days, which makes me appreciate the days that CF seems not that big a deal. And so it's all a part of ups and downs. Unfortunately, those of us with CF have more challenges in a day, and makes it harder sometimes, and it makes it harder because it's not always something we feel we have control over. So the way I look at it is sometimes this is not a great answer, I have a sort of a CF-free day. I sort of, I just can't handle doing my treatments. But I always do that in mind of knowing that I have consequences to pay for that I'm going to sleep terrible that night because I haven't done any treatments. But sometimes you just need a break. But the way I look at it now is this is the one thing I can control and start to do my treatments more and really, really try. And it is really hard, and I can't even kid you. Being old, it just makes it more complicated sometimes. So there's more to do. But know that you have this stuff in your control, and what you can do every day is do it. And there's lots of ways to figure it out. But it is really hard, and it's not easy, and it sets us apart from others. But know that you're not the only one that has to do it. I'm doing it every day too. And I'm old. It takes me a long time to do all this stuff. But it is a challenge, and it's hard. And but there's so many other things that make it okay. When I have a really, really bad CF day, honestly, I look for anything outside of CF to make it a better day. Honestly, I'm a total sucker for puppies, so I will look for a puppy. Or I'll see a little old couple holding hands. I'll see a really pretty flower, because there's more to our lives than just our CF, and there's stuff that makes it a great world, even though CF doesn't make it great sometimes. So we fight every day to find the good stuff. And sometimes the good stuff has nothing to do with CF. It's, your awesome acting job. It is, the ability to go play with your friends or celebrate, or that new movie is coming out that you want to see. It's sometimes those little things that make it better and make it worth the fight. But it's not easy. I'm not going to kid you. But there's so much good. And you know, you just understand that love and support you have from your family and your friends, and that you have this whole team here trying to figure out how to make it better and easier. And, you know, I know this probably doesn't sound right, but it's a great time to have CF. It is such a better time than when I was growing up and your age. And so you just have to keep fighting every day, because eventually there's going to be good stuff, and it's a very hopeful time. But I know it's terrible sometimes. Not going to tease you. There's days where I'm like, oh, totally, this is not cool.
And Kristin, there was one thing that that if you don't mind, I'm bringing it up for one of our conversations about your motivation. So looking back as a teenager, going through different priorities, a busy schedule, that, you know, at times you really opted to do your treatments because you felt better to do things that you wanted to do. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about this motivation and how that helped you through all these years?
Right. So, I mean, I am, and I don't know if you guys have children that are challenging or competitive. So I'm very accepting of what CF is, the good, the bad, the ugly, the big elephants in the room. But I also want to put up the biggest fight I possibly can. And so that is my huge motivation, is to fight like I have never fought before. And I think, you know, the reality of what I can do, and that sort of limitless possibilities of things I can do and experiences I can have is a huge motivation. You know, just that ability to make my day better. And I think as a teenager, I actually had a bit of a rough go, but I never gave up, because it was still worth fighting. And I think it was still, even though things were hard and things were bad, and I was having to eat more than humanly possible, and having to have a bazillion calories, and, you know, having to do more treatments or being in the hospital frequently, and realizing that my friends weren't having to do that. But I knew if I put that time in and made that effort, that I could get back to my life. And sometimes it is very separate, like your life and your CF life and everything you have to do. But you have to realize everything you do for your CF allows you to have that life. And so that's trying to figure that out and trying to find the balance and try to do those things. And as you were talking earlier, and even during your presentation and your play, I was thinking of myself and the things. Sometimes I spent so much time and energy figuring out how to get out of doing something that if I had just done it, it would have been shorter. But sometimes it was a huge chess match with my healthcare team or my parents. And so now I don't do that as much. I still play little games every once in a while. But I think it's sort of, you know, you just have to sort of use that perhaps deviousness and honoriness that I think is sort of genetically involved with CF as well, to channel it for good and figure out how to smush all that into a day so you can get to the good stuff. I think that's really important as well. Any other questions? So the question was what a typical day is for me. So, and this is sort of a plan I've worked out with my team, and so it works for me, so I would always just work with your team to figure out what works, because that's one thing, CF is incredibly individual. So I usually get up. Because of the amount of treatment I need to do, because I am older, I usually allow about 2 hours to 2.5 hours before I need to be out the door. And that also includes treatment time, beauty time, which is pretty low maintenance, luckily, and then treatment. So I'll start with bronchodilator. I do use Pulmozyme. I do the vest for about 35 minutes. Then I do whatever other nebs I need to do, and then inhaled antibiotics. So that's sort of the morning, and any oral medications that I need to take. Then I'm off for the day. And then I sort of repeat that whole block in the evening or before bed. Occasionally I'll slip a third treatment in, where I'll use hypertonic depending on my schedule. So it's sort of the bookends. I was just at a meeting at our company, and I'm always sort of the last to bed and the first to get up, and not because I'm having the most fun, just because I'm having to spend that time taking care of myself. But again, it goes back to that reality of, then I had a good day because I got all of that out of the way. I was really diligent. So there's lots of moving parts, and my CF care I look at as a giant jigsaw puzzle, and it's never going to look the same every time I do treatments because of how I feel or what's going on. But I have all these great pieces to put together to make it work for me. And that's where working and being really well educated about myself and sort of how my body is reacting to things. Plus, if I don't feel well, I can call my team ahead of time. You know, I can nip an exacerbation in the bud. I can get ahead of it. Versus, I wasn't always good about that. I was sort of like, I'm not sick, you can't make me go in, drag myself till I couldn't, to the end. And now I understand that's not very productive. And so now I'm much more proactive in trying to not get it too far. So I can stay like this. I don't want to do this. I want to have this.
So I think this speaks to that self-confidence that we mentioned, that you will learn as you get more familiar with your body and with your disease to recognize when you're actually starting with something and react to that. Well, maybe I can include a third treatment, or I can call my doctor and ask to be seen. So that confidence is built up over time. So don't expect that all your 12-year-olds will be able to do that like right away. This is something that we work on over time. And on that note, I'll thank you so much. And